Good. Is this on? Yeah. All right, so we'd love to invite everybody up, down in the first 3 rows. You will not get wet. You will not get hit with any projectiles. Just come on down. Get us all warmed up for dinner and what comes after.
And we're saying first 3 rows. So if you're in row 4 or row 5, move your butts. You might need to sit next to someone.
Yes. All right, how about a nice shout out for our interpreters today? Thank you. Well done. Okay, you're in the last session of the day. We're gonna lay out a little bit of our goals for today, introduce ourselves. We are down 1, and then we'll get going. Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, so I'm Liz Vu. I'm a program associate with the technology program at the Sloan Foundation. Let's see, personal background. So I was like, how do I introduce myself again? So in case, I know the Sloan Foundation was mentioned a bunch today, but in case you don't know, we fund basic research, science, in the sciences and also social sciences and economics. But the technology program is different in that we think cross disciplines, and really our goal is to level up researchers and how they do their research by thinking about the tools that they use, the technological tools, but also how they use those tools. And so I've been at the Sloan Foundation for the last 2 years. Ooh. In terms of my personal background, I'm a recovering academic, so I have a PhD in biological oceanography. I've lived experience as someone who worked in a lab and with building a stack of open source software. I also have practical experience helping to build teams making open source software. And now I'm doing neither of that in a role at Sloan.
Awesome. I'm Raya El-Zain. I work for a small tech nonprofit called Code for Science and Society. And now it's my turn to feedback from that one. This is the spot, Liz, right here. This is the spot. I'm also a recovering academic. I have a PhD in theater and performance studies. And I'm a person who thinks about change a lot, how it happens, why things happen when they happen. And my work with different communities, whether it's been artists or technologists, has been about thinking about how can we catalyze that change? How can we be agents of that change? And so for Code for Science and Society, I manage an incubator program. It's called the Digital Infrastructure Incubator. And we work with teams of technologists as they're thinking about their social infrastructure, their governance, their community engagement designs, etc. So that's a little bit about the 2 of us. We've been tasked with a tiny panel, a 30-minute panel, right? That is about what do we do with all the information that we've gotten today? And how can we mobilize it moving from here? So that's why it's a short panel, and it's designed to catalyze conversation as we move into the social part of the evening and the breakout groups tomorrow. So the first thing we thought would be nice is if you turn to your left and introduce yourself to the person on your left. Some good connections happening. All right. Why don't you go ahead and turn to your right and introduce yourself to the person on your right?
All right, if you're one of those who got out of their seats, why don't you go ahead and find your seat again? Make sure it's nearby someone, because you will be talking to your neighbor again. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and take a seat, but make sure you're next to a neighbor. Great. And just so I can map the room a little bit, if you were in the first panel as a panelist and a moderator, please raise your hand. Great, great. That's the second panel, one right before lunch. Only one warrior left. All right, third panel. At 1 o'clock, great. Fourth. Great. Fifth. Is that us?
No, there was.
One more. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so what we'd like to do is do 2 rounds of for the teachers in the room. Think, pair, share. Both Rhea and I have reflections that we have from listening all day to you, connect with each other, talk about challenges and opportunities, but we would like to speak about our reflections as open questions and invite discussion, and that discussion will occur with your neighbors. So after introducing our topic, we'll invite you to think a little bit about that, speak with your neighbors for a few minutes, and then we'll invite folks to share out to the group. And so I'm glad that we have representation across the different panels that occurred today. We'll walk around with the microphone too, so everyone can hear. All right, so the reflection I had today from listening to everyone, well, first, before getting into that, I'll put a spotlight on Josh Greenberg over there, who, I mean, Greenberg. So one of the first things I learned about him when I first started working with him was how much he loved bureaucratic innovation. When I first learned that, I was like, that is the unsexiest thing I've ever heard, but it's actually some, but it's actually, I've come around because some of the most exciting opportunities that come through our desks at the Slum Foundation really think deeply about institutional structures and how to work within them in a way that furthers your mission. And so what I heard today throughout the different panels were discussions about what those structures were, and they were just named. They weren't really explained. They were mentioned as doing open work in the office of the VPR, or doing that kind of work from the library in the academic setting. There was also mention of like hybrid library and engineering department. So we heard folks speak about those institutional homes. In the industry OSPO context, we heard very different vocabulary, right? We heard the marketing department, we heard engineering, R&D, the strategy department. And so, I was thinking about whether it was a good exercise to do a mapping of these vocabularies and terms, and think about what that means. If you can do like a similarity resonance, or if you could read between the lines about where open work can flourish within these institutional structures. And I'll give an example. So I heard the importance of having the office of the VPR be involved with OSPOs, the formation of them and of the marketing of them. And I thought about what that could possibly say about the need for certain power structures. So that's kind of like reading between the lines. Another thing I heard when I heard about the library being an important space for open innovation is, mission alignment. So thinking about what the mission of a university library could be what the mission of open work could be and how that alignment makes a lot of sense. And so what I invite you to do when you discuss with your neighbors and when you share out is think about those resonances. So actually, draw from your experience, or you can just draw from what you heard today and try to do that mapping between industry and academic OSPOs and kind of read between the lines and share what you might think is, what the factors are of those institutional structures that lend well to doing open work. So yeah, just a few minutes of.
Yeah, we'll give you like 3 to 5 minutes, depending on what we hear from the crowd. So just go ahead and discuss and I'll just tag on to what Liz said. Many of you talked about like your roles in the different open offices as translating work from inside and outside, but we could think of us here as a kind of like incubator for translators between academia and industry in different places. So that's what you're doing. You're bridging those connections, starting with how do we think about our institutions? And go.
I know this group is chatty, but in order to give Rhea some time for her reflection, I invite you to look back up here, wrap up your conversations. Great. So I would love to hear or have someone from a group share their reflection. I'm looking at Andy, maybe?
Hi, we were spending some time to get our thoughts to congeal. We were talking a little bit about time, and the translation point there is timescales in the private sector and government and academia, and they're different. So how do you know when you're successful, and how long does it take to assess if something works or not? That was one thing we talked about. And then we were just talking about how different types of institutions and different programs and different departments have different possibilities for being fertile ground for experimentation. How'd I do? Okay.
I heard some rumblings as other groups talk about time scales. Anyone from this corner want to share something?
I think what was significant is talking about the fact that it seems like often the nonprofits are having to go to these other entities to get representation and things of that nature. And instead, how can it be possibly the other way? Because they're not having the kinds of funding that the others are having. And how can we break some of those barriers down?
How about this group up here?
Time scales
Oh,
yeah, I think we were just kind of talking about just reflecting on some of the discussions during the day. I was kind of explaining what we do at the academies, which is not maybe as relevant. I mean, we're kind of taking in the expertise from all of you and figuring out how we can do new projects and new initiatives that kind of foster and promote open for everyone else. Whereas we may not be as open ourselves, where we're doing consensus studies that depend on confidential communications among committee members and so forth. But I think that it's an exciting time with the policy changes in Washington, with different new initiatives from NSF, the interest of funders, like the ones here today, in promoting and pushing open work. I think that there's a lot coming together right now that will advance this work, and it's exciting to be part of it.
Maybe in the interest of time, we wrap up that reflection. Thank you for participating. I'll hand it off to Rhea.
Super, sounds great. So we're gonna do one more, but we'll give you a little less time to do it. What I was thinking about today is, as we're trying to bridge these different sectors, what audiences do we have in mind when we're thinking about openness? And are we talking about the same ones, right? What communities are we imagining that we are accountable to? So open to whom? The public good, the public sharing, the public service that we're doing, who makes up that public? So what I'd like to do is give you just a few minutes to reflect on that with your new friends. And then we'll come back. Go ahead. Okay, we want to get you to a break and then to a reception where there will be refreshment. So we're going to wrap up really quickly. We were on that side before, so we're going to be on this side now. Would anybody from these groups like to share out what they were thinking about? Oh, you might get called on.
We were just talking about, so I was bringing up that our audience kind of as a land grant, we're, I think it was, Kendall was talking, as a land grant, UCSC is also very focused on public good, and the public is our audience. And so we see our audience as being the research enterprise of UCSC, and hopefully at UC writ large at one point. And of course, their audience, the researchers, are the California people and the students and the faculty that are within the UC system. So that's kind of how we envision who we are trying to serve. Did I do okay?
Yes, please, thanks.
Okay. Not sure we are answering exactly the question that you were asking, but a discussion we had here, remember there is an old saying that says that if you don't study your history, you are bound to make the same mistakes again and again. So we were pondering about how we ended up getting here. So now we are all poised to try to open up something that is now closed. How the hell, sorry, my English not perfect. How the hell we ended up moving from a science research that was supposed to be open to something that is completely closed. So discussing this issue here, there are a couple of things that came out. One is a matter of incentives, of course, and the other is a matter of scale. So the growth of the scientific community over time has been overwhelming. Think about me. I'm a full professor, okay? So in my career, I need to have PhD students. If they are successful, they will have PhD students. If I have 10 PhD students, each of them will be a professor, will have 10 PhD students. Doesn't require a lot of math to see that after a while, the number of researchers grows exponentially. So to make the long story short, even if here we are very interested in thinking about new method of measuring what is the scientific progress and new incentives, we should try not to make the same mistake again. So we closed up everything because there was a competition which was not based on the actual value of the result. Just opening up everything doesn't mean we will solve the issue. So we need to think a little bit more about what we are working on. What is your objective of scientific research? So in some sense, I'm connecting to you, to your question, who are we working for? Okay, what is the result that is expected from our work?
Oh, yes.
One thing is, I think we got into the pickle that we are in because we are humans and self-interested. What I think we want, I can at least speak for myself, is to better science broadly. And that means maybe not having the individuals, researchers or scientists, be the focus, but to do what's better for the research enterprise writ large.
Super, thank you very much. Actually, like, what vision of open is the question that I wanted to ask, but I was afraid it was going to be too heavy. So thank you for taking us there. Could we have a round of applause for Eva? Is she here? She's already there. Okay, we'll tell her we gave her a round of applause. Thank you to Stephen and Mike, for hosting us. And thank you all for your participation this afternoon. Bye-bye.